recorded. Thank you. And as I say, I have been joined this evening by the dynamic duo. My name is Zora Johnson, and I'm the founder of Soul to Soul Connections. And yes, you've logged on to Black Men's Emotional Health and Wellbeing event. I'll talk a little bit about myself, about 30 seconds. My background is in health. I have been a trained nurse for nearly 40 years, and during that time, I've done a number of things, as you can imagine, with a career spanning nearly 40 years. And you can see from the grey hairs, I've got plenty to show from my experience. I've trained for a number of years and worked in the community as a sexual health practitioner. I've worked as a community nurse for several years as I worked as an independent consultant. I've worked in the private sector in elderly care, and I'm now back in the NHS doing some consultancy work. However, on my travels, I have come across mental health in terms of how it affects Black men, especially. I am currently working alongside the director for Birmingham Solihull's Mental Health Trust. So I'm really getting much more than a helicopter view. I'm getting hands-on experience of the issues surrounding the population in Birmingham and Solihull. However, I am very much aware that this is an issue that has been affecting men in our community for the longest while. And I really feel that, you know, now is the time to grasp it by its horns, to really try to find some solutions to support our men and to see how we can move things forward. So like I said, I'm joined this evening by two amazing young gentlemen. And if you'd just like to raise your hand, Antonio. I'll just do a quick a bio for you. Antonio is a trained psychotherapist. He's an amazing gentleman over here from Jamaica. Trelawney is his hometown. Previously, he was a police officer. Now he is an author, presenter, and devoted minister. He does believe that we are all seeds created by God, and really feels that we are God's seeds for success. Nathaniel, brother Nathaniel, raise your hand for me so people can see who you are. Another amazing gentleman who's a practitioner and facilitator of mental health courses. He's also been a youth mental health first aider, and currently is the director of Self Mastery, which provides guidance and tools needed to master the mind, soul, and body. He is also involved in something called Powernomics, which believes in cultivating self-actualization, self-respect, self-determination, and self-reliance in the, is it the Black man or in any individual? Welcome both of you, and welcome to those of you that are on the platform. Would you like to quickly say hello? Antonio?
Hello everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to a great evening with some great interaction with you guys, just to ensure that we are doing the work to support Black men to become their best. And thank you guys for being here. I know you could be doing anything else, but you choose to be here today, so really appreciate it.
And thank you so much. Nathaniel, just a few words for you.
Yeah, no, just echoing what Brother Antonio had just said. You know, it's a pleasure to be a part of this. We hope that you get a lot out of it, and you know, just greetings, family. It's lovely to be amongst people that take a vested interest in our health, our holistic health.
Yeah, totally. I think there are a lot of smaller activity. I say smaller, there are more activities going on in the community. I think in terms of Black men's
You're muted, Sister Dora.
Oh, yeah. Have I been muted all this time? Can I be heard? Can I be heard now? I do apologize.
Yeah.
Yes, Black men's mental health and awareness, in my view, seems to be a bolt on. It seems to be in terms of services that it's not the core of mental health services. It seems to be something that a lot of trusts across the nation are really only giving piecemeal funding to. And certainly in terms of the therapists and advisors, quite often there isn't sufficient cultural appropriation. So a lot of Black men are going into services where they're not being understood and they are not having their needs met. So what I thought I would do is take a deep dive into looking at some of the data surrounding Black men using our services. That's a little bit about us in the panel. Right, and it's really important that we're aware that this is not something that we're hyper-inflating. The crisis within our community is absolutely real. This isn't a joke. This isn't something that we should be undermining. And I think it's reached a critical point in our community where it's really important that we sit up, take stock, and really look at some of the issues. So when I was doing the research, I wasn't surprised when I saw these figures, if I'm going to be really honest with you. I think probably everybody on the platform knows of somebody in our community who is experiencing challenges with their mental health. But we have to ask ourselves, why is that? What is actually going on that's driving this statistic to continue to rise year on year? What is actually going on? And what I'm hoping is in this session this evening is that we will have a closer look at some of the issues. You know, what I want is for everybody on the platform, whether or not you're a man or a woman, to be able to feel that we've given you some tips in order to support the men in our community, because I think it's really reaching a critical point. So in this chart we have on the left-hand side, what you've got are a number of bars. And essentially what it's saying here is that the number of Black men or Black British individuals per head of what we call per capita in the population, we have got on average 300 Black men going into these organizations per 100,000 in the community. All right, now you've got to realize that our community is very small. There's only 1.8 million people of Black and African Caribbean in the UK. So if you've got such a significant number of a very tiny population anyway, that's going to have a huge impact on the community at large. Okay, and the chart on the right-hand side also captures this figure. And what you can see is that men from the African Caribbean community, you can see we are streets ahead. This longest bar here is the one that denotes the amount of people from the Caribbean utilising the mental health services in the UK. And for me, it's a travesty. You know, I'm not a statistician, but anyone can see at a glance the issues or the impact that this is having in our community. Now, when we were looking at the group of us, both myself, Antonio and Nathaniel, when we were really trying to get to the number of it and try to actually understand, you know, at the end of the road, if someone is really, really depressed, what's the likely outcome? Well, it's likely that they might want to commit suicide, sadly. Now, again, you can see the levels of individuals who in our community, or sorry, in the community at large, are committing suicide. And you can see here, you probably can't see from the graph, but the highest age category are individuals that fall in 90 plus. The second largest are those that fall between 45 and 50. Okay, so if any of you on the platform experiencing any mental health and following in this age group, you can see how it peaks from this particular age group. Now, what I couldn't find were the suicide rates that pertain to our community. And in fact, the Office of National Statistics do not actually gather that. There's a statement on their website that say that they don't capture this figure. But again, if they did, it would be very, very interesting to know what the outcome in terms of the impact on our community is. Now, again, I'm not making any assumptions that anyone on the platform is feeling suicidal, but what I did find was a statement by somebody who left a note before he took this very, very unfortunate step. And he says the illness has caused him so much pain that not even the strongest medication could dull the pain, and there was no cure. He said all day, every day, a screaming agony in every nerve ending in his body was nothing short of torture. He felt that his mind is a wasteland filled with visions of incredible horror, unceasing depression and crippling anxiety. And even with all the medications the doctor dared to give, simple things that everyone takes for granted was always nearly impossible for him. He could not laugh or could cry. He could barely leave the house and derived no pleasure from any activity. Everything simply came down to passing time until he could sleep again. Now he felt he was going to sleep forever, as it was the most merciful thing that he could imagine experiencing. Now that's a very, very powerful statement, and I pray that no one online is in that state. But I'm going to hand you over now to Antonio, who's going to talk about stigma.
Hello, everyone. Thanks again for being here. Zora just really impacted me with all those findings, because I know it is such a colossal problem in our society, and there's so much Black men right now as we speak that are suffering. And I'm really grateful that we're having this space to talk about some of these challenges that we face within our community. Now, as a Black man and a therapist, I know all too well on a daily basis how much Black men struggle. And research indicate that Black men often suffer in silence because of the stigmas around mental health. As a therapist, I have been working as a psychological therapist since 2017, and I can count on one hand the amount of Black men that are coming into therapy and actually stay in therapy. If they start, they sometimes drop out, and there's so much barriers that contribute to this. And the barriers that we see are oftentimes the stigmas, the pressure to conform to traditional gender norms, such as this man need to man up or need to be tough. All these things, kind of cause us as men sometimes to not be vulnerable enough to utilize the support and the systems that are in place. So oftentimes what we find is that without outlet to process these anger, we find that many people might get misinterpreted as if they're angry, or Black men are really contributing to so much problem, when we really just don't really know how to express our emotions. And so what we find is that we struggle to speak about what we're experiencing, and oftentimes these difficulty might lead to things such as drinking alcohol and so forth to kind of cope with these difficult emotions that we're experiencing. So the stigma and the hardship, it's a real problem that we have to now start to navigate through. Research indicate, as we mentioned, that one in every four person that you meet is experiencing depression. So we know that depression is something common in our community, and oftentimes it's not something that we express. We just say, well, we just feel a way, especially if you're a Black man, I just feel a way, or we don't feel good, or you just tough it out and you're reasoning in your head, and we don't really find the space. And sometimes the societal stigmas cause us to think that we can't be vulnerable to go and access therapy. Now we're going to talk about these difficulties today. Let's move on. Now, underlying reasons. What are some of the reasons why Black men don't engage in therapy? Socioeconomic hardship. Now, if you grew up in a society like myself, I grew up in Jamaica, and growing up in Jamaica, you really don't have much access to psychological services. In fact, you don't have access to a lot of systems. So you're socialized to be tough. And when you grow up with poor in a poor society, you don't see the need to actually talk about your difficulty. In fact, it is frowned upon to talk about how you're feeling, because that's not the best way of dealing with emotions. And these are things that we're going to touch on further in this assessment, in this session today, because a lot of us are carrying um, traditional things that our parents did and think that it's the best way to cope now, but it's still not serving us. Our foreparents, our mothers might have, and fathers might have never talked about how they're feeling, so we never see the importance of doing that. And so because we are poor, sometimes we blame it, and we don't have the resources, so we use that as a means to never get help. System inequalities. We know that there's so much inequalities out there. Black men are least likely to access psychological support, and even if we do access psychological support, sometimes, as was said earlier, we are misunderstood. The system don't have enough therapists who are going to understand our needs or tailor the therapy to us. And so what we find is that oftentimes, even if you do engage in the system, you just think that the system is not for you. And so there are a lot of things that need to be done, even within the NHS, to make therapy more fitting for Black men. I myself have done quite a lot of work in the bar that I work, in terms of creating groups specifically for Black men, creating environment, emotional support environment, where Black men and women can come and talk about their difficulties. Before I went there, they didn't have any services like that. So there are lots of things that we need to now go into the system and start change. We know institutionalized racism is still a big factor. Sometimes those kind of nonverbal cues, those kind of um, things that we sometimes see within different systems that we try to access, can sometimes be a hindrance and deterrence to us not wanting to access services. Sometimes just the way the system is for you to get to therapy is difficult. The waiting time is so long. And sometimes, even as a Black person, you feel like, well, because I'm Black, I'm even getting it, and my wait is even longer. As persons have said that to me, why is it that the waiting is so long for us? And I think that Black men, based on the crisis that we have, we should be expedited within services. There should be services that real in an institutionalized way. Government and those who make the policy should see that there is a real crisis out here, and make it more accessible for us as Black men. We know discrimination is an ongoing thing, and we know that 2020 showed us that racism is still active and is alive within our society. We know that racism is constantly plaguing us, and that also causes us to spend a lot of time in our head, because if we are not feeling like society is accepting us, it's going to cause us to shut down more. We're not going to express our feelings. We're going to be more in our thoughts, and guess what? Thoughts are not facts, so we start to believe the very lies our minds are telling us. And sometimes this doesn't improve our mental health. The internalized discrimination sometimes does more harm than good, because if we never talk about how we feel, the way we were made to feel is something that we're owning like it's our reality. And not because you were discriminated, it doesn't mean that you have to live discriminated. There's a difference between feeling something and living it. And that's something that we can actually look into more, and start to create space where we talk more about our feelings and how discrimination make us feel. Lack of social support. Um, I think this is an ongoing problem, but I think it's getting much better. There are more social support out there, like we're doing today, to create the space to talk. There are lots of social media spaces that are coming on to support Black men, and create more awareness. Feeling of pain and humiliation is something that is constantly there. We're carrying around generations of pain. We're carrying the pain of our ancestors, the struggles that they've gone through. And a lot of time it creates what we call trauma. We're carrying trauma that's been passed down. And if we don't talk about how we feel, we are only just passing that trauma on to the next generation, because we've not learned to actually express our feelings. And at the next point, speak about historical trauma, which we're going to talk more about. It's alive in our behavior. It's alive in our thinking. Many of us were carrying the thinking of our foreparents. We reason how they reason, and these way of coping has not helped us. So we have to think about, are the things that we're doing really serving us? Are they working against us? Let's move on. Now someone is saying something. Go ahead, Suzette.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening, Nathaniel. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Suzette.
Yeah.
Greetings.
Greetings. So I am really delighted to be here because this is also a passion of mine. As I think Nathaniel knows, we've spoken about this before, and Zora and I have done a sort of few events. But this is to my heart in terms of Black men wanting them to be the best they can be, and also mental health, because I also work in mental health field. So some of the things that you've mentioned, is it Antonio? Sorry, I can't quite.
Yes, Antonio. Antonio.
Okay, pronounce your name correctly. So I don't know if Nathaniel remembers, at our trust, we did a lot of work around race and cultural capability. And a lot of that was trying to address some of the inbuilt racism from practitioners. And that was, it was something that we were able to get onto the training timetable, but it wasn't sustained because, these things require costs. But for me, listening to you, I think it's fantastic what we're doing. As you said, since 2020, there's so much on sort of online, etc. But I do think we need to take responsibility, and Black men, I would love to encourage them to start looking at investing in themselves in terms of mental health and accessing therapy. So much of what you said, I totally agree with in terms of the traumas that we've experienced and also some of the stigma within our community, particularly as well. So there's a lot to address, but I do think that we as a community need to address it or start to address it, because I don't think it's something that's going to be done sort of overnight.
That's true.
And I would be really interested to find out your experience in Jamaica as well, because I think it all connects. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I mean, as I said, for me, one of the things that growing up in Jamaica has taught me when I came here and became a therapist is how detached I was from my emotions. I never understood emotions. The only thing I understood was, boy, we just feel away, we just feel bad, we feel good. You'd never understand that you could be sad, frustrated, angry, annoyed, distressed, and those are things that I had to learn how to express my emotions, because when you grow in a society that teach you to be tough, tough is all you know, and it doesn't serve you. You're carrying around, you grew up in a society that has had years of slavery, and everyone in my society growing up in Jamaica is wired to be tough. We're working from a slavery mentality, and coming here recognize that the people that are from Jamaican background or Caribbean background, it's the same mentality. It hasn't changed. Even though you're in a different continent, you have more education, you have more facility, you have more access, but the mentality is similar. Because why? There's something about post-traumatic slave syndrome, as we're going to go into, that passes down through the lineage. It's called transgenerational trauma. These things, it passes down. It doesn't just leave you, it because you're coping much better. You have to recognize how difficult these things can be. So one great Dr. Degree, she's done some work on post-traumatic slave syndrome, and what she found is that the experiences of the plantation has not left us as Black people, and it continued to move throughout the generation, and it creates what is called intergenerational trauma, which lead to psychological and behavioral syndrome. What this is simply saying that the things that we have experienced, even on the plantation, has resulted in how we see ourselves affecting our self-concept, and it creates things such as internalized trauma that we deal with on a daily basis, causing us to feel angry at times, causing us to feel like the systems are against us, and we sometimes don't really understand why we are feeling the way we are feeling. But it's not just something that you just get up and you just feel overwhelmed. These are things that have process, and I had to go through a time when I had to look back at how it is that my father upbringing affected me. And because my father grew up in a system that he wasn't socialized to express himself, and the way he treated me, I had to recognize that he's treating me based on how he was treated by his father. And that's how I had to start to break these barriers, that I can't allow my children to then become they won't be, I don't want them to be affected by what my father passed down to me. My father didn't know that what he was going through was actually coming from his father, and vice versa. So transgenerational trauma is telling us that there are links that continue, but we have the power to break that through recognizing that we can become vulnerable, we can be open to change, we can be open to see things through a different perspective. Because the reality is, why trauma continue is that we continue to relive the experience and not starting to live a new experience. The reliving is we do things like grandmother did it, we do things like our daddy do it, we do things like the Dan in our community do it, we do things like the Tugs do it, and we don't look, how can I do this different? How to break this cycle is to then start to create a different perspective. How can I see it different? How can I do it different? How can I live it different? And that's what I had to do for myself. I can't do it how everyone in my community do it. You know, I think I'm the first therapist from my community, and that's why I'm so passionate about this, because I have a generation of people who are depending on the knowledge that I'm gaining to change their perspective. And so we're dealing with a real crisis here. When we speak about transgenerational trauma, we're talking about generations of misconception, distorted thinking, that we continue to believe certain lies that comes into our head, and the fact that we were on the plantation system, that we can't change and things won't be different. It can change if we're willing to start putting the work, and that's why we're here today. Let's move on.
Wonderful, thank you. Could I just add to that, in order to, because really when we are, if you think about it, many of our guests on the platform are parents. And when it comes to parenting, you end up doing things that are instinctive. You don't go to a manual and say, my child is misbehaving, is swearing, and da-di-da. So all we tend to have in terms of our immediate reference is how we were treated as children. So we would act out in the same way that our parents disciplined. And for the can I ask all the visitors
turn your thing down
platform to turn your mics off?
Volume right down.
Lovely, thank you very much. And so I think it's very easy to see how the act of slavery and the behaviours that are associated with it was very easy to hand down from generation to generation without any thought. But I think, you know, what it takes, and what you've acknowledged, Antonio, is the amount of courage that it takes to step out of the old, same old, same old, same old. And it takes courage and insight to say, look, you can't just keep on feeling aware. You know, there's got to be something else to life, rather than acting out what our forefathers did. Not to say that it wasn't relevant at the time, but it does take a man with insight to break away from the chains of the previous slavery acts to sort of say, you know, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right, and I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to break away and make a stand. So thank you very much for that, because it really does take a man of courage to sort of say, look, guys, we've got to do something different. So we're going to hand you over now to our dear brother Nathaniel. So take it away.
I give thanks, Sister Zora, and a lot to just take in there from Brother Antonio. I will just quickly and add in, because I'm very, very mindful, coming from what Sister Suzette mentioned of the trust that I've worked for, the Southwest London and St George's Mental Health Trust. We have a recovery college department which focuses on teaching those about mental health on a very basic level. So I always try to bring it to the basics. And just start with 3 words. Intuition. Sister Zora was referring to, when you have that ability to kind of think within yourself and try and make that paradigm shift. And I encourage those to listen to their intuition. And I'm very passionate about words and what they mean. So very simply, the ability to understand something instinctively without the need for conscious reasoning. This happens constantly to us. So we really need to harness our intuition and use it to our advantage. And the second word was trauma, as Brother Antonio was talking about post-traumatic slave syndrome. And trauma, very simply, is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience. We all go through that at some point in our life. So it's mindful for us to really break down those words and understand that trauma is real. We're all having that experience. For the last 2 years, I'd say we've gone through some levels of trauma. So it's important for us to think about that. But what I'll touch on is the exploring of the assimilation and ourselves. So our ancestors, as we know, coming from the global African Caribbean community, they had each other. The bonds were formidable. They were literally in chains next to each other. So there was separation at times, but they were amongst their own, despite having to give up their names and adopt a culture that wasn't theirs or wasn't of their own. There was always a strong connection to the culture. There's a famous scholar, Dr. Marimba Ani, who speaks about the Ma'afa, and she phrases it in terms that as almost the umbilical cord being cut from our roots and culture, something that we have to be aware of if we want to move forward. And the mindset of survival was passed on from generation to generation. So we know that whether that be through storytelling, whether that be through certain practices, again, our roots and our culture, that's that bit more difficult to break down. And we knew who we were once upon a time, and some of us, we still do that searching. There's the Twi saying, I believe it's referred to as Sankofa, to go back and fetch, to look back and see what your roots and cultures are and what they were. And so beliefs about being Black and interconnectedness has eroded over time. Assimilation, and that was the last definition I really wanted us to get a full understanding about. And the meaning of that, very simply, is the process whereby individuals or groups of different ethnic heritage are absorbed into the dominant culture of a society. I'll repeat that again, the process whereby individuals or groups of different ethnic heritage, so ethnic minorities as we're normally phrased, are absorbed into the dominant culture of society. Stigma comes into that, and research indicates Black men often suffer in silence because of the stigma around mental health. As Brother Antonio was phrasing, we would just call it the simple term. Sometimes we don't have the language, hence why we'd be silent. But a lot of it is about the ego, the bravado, the fact that being a man and the gender characteristics really play a part, not to mention the socioeconomic factors. But the pressure to conform, to confirm to traditional gender norms, such as toughness and fearlessness, means they're much likely to open up. So again, that bravado, that ego. And if there is no outlet, which I think Sister Suzette touched on quite rightly, we're trying to combat that even more so now through spaces like this. But when there is no outlet to process the anger, then it shows up in aggression or violence, and we normally phrase that as acting out. You know, it's a sign when, as you said, when you cannot articulate through words, when you cannot express yourself with you being in control, then normally it's going to play out through one of our strongest emotions, and anger being channeled through a violent act. Men who struggle to speak openly about their emotions are more likely to use harmful coping mechanisms such as drugs and alcohol, and other disserviceful and at times comfortable practices. So assimilating and internalizing racism is what I really want to speak on now. And there we have it. Assimilation means taking on a control or a culture that is not your own, as we touched on in detail. And I literally just of finding that definition in detail was from Britannica. So this is, it's real. It's coming from the sources where we're based here in the UK. And by doing so means that your ideas, your culture, preferences fall by the wayside. So if you think about, the more you have to really try and get through life in the Western society, even more so, it's almost like you're removing parts of your identity in order to fit in. It means you must carry yourself in a way that is acceptable to a white society rather than in a way that is inherent to your culture. I remember working in the NHS, my 9 to 5, and my cheekbones were sore by the end of the day, because I knew that, and it became a normal habit. Smiling can often then demystify or remove the idea, the stereotypical idea of the angry black man, or the aggressive black man, the black man that may be out to do something untoward. And so smiling was something which I just assimilated into, but by gosh, by the end of the day, I'm like, oh, my cheekbones. So this poses an ongoing conundrum about who you are. And you often, shouldn't say even often, there are times when you will have that kind of checking in with self. What am I doing? Why am I here? What is my purpose? The promise is that you can have it all, but you lose your mind in the process. So you can really become of high status in this Western society, in your respective field, but you're losing the parts of who you are. And on a personal, I remember my brothers and sisters saying to me one day, so how's your family then? How's the NHS? And I was like, what do you mean? I said, oh, well, you're always there, innit? Like that's just what you do. And then I had to really think about it. By the end of that week, that strong, I was like, right, that's it. I'm going to draw a line. But I had to have a moment. We all need to take a moment. So internalizing that racism, is that you cannot reclaim your mind and be cultural or neutral at the same time. You have to, and it can be exhausting, pick and choose. Our ancestors had to hide who they were in order to survive. And again, that's a trait, a behavior that we continue to this day. We do not have to be limited to other people's imaginations. We have our own. And that's one of the beauties. It's something which I'm become more passionate now personally, which is the mindset. And boy, it's a powerful thing. As I'm sure we've all heard, it's more powerful than the most state-of-the-art computer. It works rapidly. We need to look after that. So recognizing your internalized racism and how it impacts your thinking, that's work. And we shouldn't be doing that alone, I would say. And yes, you're right, there is the aspect of emotional trauma. I see that from yourself, MCB. These things, they play a significant part in our day-to-day activity. and they build up, right? So we'll always seek new ways to bolster who you are as an African descended person. That's the ways to combat it, I would say, you know, to really go out and see, well, what are my roots and culture? What makes up my identity? You know, thank you. And the we'll have a discussion on the anxiety and depression beneath it all. I believe, yeah, that when we think about, you know, the concepts of how we are worrying, the anxiety that comes over us, it can be debilitating. It can be where we feel out of control, and especially as men, you know, one of those dominant characteristics is that we're in control. We know what we're doing, you know, we're in charge. And when you lose that, Sister Zora gave at the beginning the rates of suicide, that can be the most damning, you know, side of it, when you are feeling out of control. And that's all within the mind, but it's manifesting all around you. When you are honest with yourself, you realize that you're feeling so overwhelmed that it feels impossible to clear your mind. It can be quite turbulent when we're going through this checking of ourselves, you know, and realizing the situation we're in. That can induce anxiety, just even reflecting of where you've come from to where you are now. So emotional health is often the same way we neglect our physical health, except that neglect of your mental health is far worse. It all starts in the mind. The mind is what determines if you're going to get up and do something about it. So it's the mind, it's the thinking, it's the feeling, and then it's the bodily action. You know, and mental health problems are often neglected. So it can come like a small part of neglect that builds up until the situation is dire and can no longer be avoided. That's when we've reached crisis. And we often hear, what happened to the prevention? What happened to trying to early intervene? You know.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. We've just got something in the chat. I've just got to quickly see if I can read. Someone called CB. They write, there's also the aspect of emotional trauma that have obviously different levels of understanding. Two people can be experiencing similar emotional trauma, but their level of understanding are coming from totally different spectrums. And again, you would expect that. That's just the way life is. No one sees the same situation in the same way. Certainly in the responsible roles that I've held over the years, people always say to me when there has been a massive drama or a massive incident, how do you keep so calm? How do you manage it? And I have to say, it's probably one of my inbuilt mechanisms, because in terms of worry and anxiety, I have a very philosophical point of view. And, you know, I have become an expert in managing drama very calmly. You know, if a building is burning down, get me on the case, because I certainly come into my own. I'm someone who can manage real incidences in a very calm way, because it's part of my personality anyway, but I've had to work on it over the years. And so for anyone who's feeling that, you know, worry and anxiety is something that's their sort of default behaviors, I think there is work that can be done in terms of reframing that, so that people can actually take some benefit out of worry and anxiety and turn it around and make it something that they can champion, that they can actually get some benefit out of it, so that it doesn't become something that is really, really debilitating. So we're going to hand you back over to Antonio. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much. And just before we move on, I just want to normalize something also, that anxiety, every single one, one of us experience anxiety. The only time we'll not experience anxiety is when we die, because anxiety is something that we need to survive. Oftentimes what happens in the context of worry is that we have different streams of worry that goes into our mind, and when we get pulled into these magnetic fields, we call them our mental magnet, then we start to feel the physical sensation of anxiety, but we misinterpret that as danger. And so we think we need to act. But oftentimes, what we need to do is to turn the volume down of the worry. And if you can turn the volume down on your worry, then the anxiety will go. And so it's like a false alarm. Anxiety is just a false alarm that there's some real threat, when oftentimes there's no real threat that is there. It's just that we're catastrophizing, thinking the worst outcome will happen. Sometimes we just need to learn to stay in the here and the now. The only thing you can change is what's happening now. And now anxiety takes you forward, thinking about the future. What's going to happen next week? As men, sometimes we want to put things in place, think about the future, how we're going to get the house, the car, everything we need. And that affects our mental health. So let's get into understanding more about mental health, because when we as Black men hear the term mental health, we quickly go to madness, and that's so not the truth. Mental health doesn't mean that you're mad. There's a difference between mental health and mental illness, and that's what we want to clarify. The term mental health, according to the World Health Organization, simply means that an individual has the ability to develop their potential, work productively and creatively, build strong and positive relationships with others, and contribute to their community. This is simply saying that you can go about your daily life having difficulties but still knowing how to cope. Let me just explain a bit about mental illness before we go. Mental illness is just when our mind becomes so overwhelmed by the different struggles of life that we are not coping well. So mental health is that you can cope. Mental illness is when you're not able to cope with the demands of life. The demands of life become so overwhelming that you're not able to function effectively. So normally, any mental health difficulty, a stress is an indicator or a good indicator of where you are with your mental health. So stress, while it is not a mental health difficulty, will tell you that you're getting into a place where your mental health might be affected. So if you feel like you're imbalanced, meaning that you have so much things happening in your life, but mentally you're not coping with it and you start to feel overwhelming, that's enough to tell you that your stress bucket is overwhelmed, is full, and if you don't get some of those things out, then you're going to find yourself in a predicament with some form of mental health difficulty, be it depression, be it anxiety, or more severe mental health. But I want to say something here to our Black men. What we find specifically within the NHS is that Black men sometimes neglect these simple things of like experiencing stress. Oh, it's just stress. Well, reality is that if we think that we're coping with stress and trying different tools and techniques that are home remedy, I would say, trying to do our own little thing, what we find is that oftentimes where us as Black men reach is in secondary care, where we have more complex mental health difficulties such as psychosis, schizophrenia. So don't ignore the little stress that you're going through. Don't ignore the fact that you have too much things worrying about or too much things thinking about. Find a outlet before it becomes something that is more dangerous as it relates to the mental health challenges. All right, let's move on. All right, so one thing that we wanna kind of recognize is that we oftentimes have feelings that is pointing us to where we are. I feel pressure to always be strong. We sometimes have feelings that we ignore sometimes or really don't understand or process. I don't want people to know my business. You want to kind of keep everything to yourself. And guess what? Many of us as Black men or black people in the whole, we like to be private. We just don't want people to know it's business. We just like to keep it private. And sometimes it's not that, you need to have everyone in your business, but a major part of managing mental health overall is one, learning to be compassionate with yourself, and two, learning to be vulnerable. If you can't develop these two skills, you're going to always be affected by some kind of mental health difficulties. A vulnerability means that you can speak about these difficult emotions. No one understands my problem. That's your perception. It's not the reality. Not because you think someone would not understand. It doesn't mean that they won't. I don't want to be a burden. And this is a common one because we think that by expressing our feelings to people, it makes us look weak. And the idea of being strong causes us to think that strength is in this ability of having it together. In fact, your greatest strength could be in your vulnerability. Your greatest strength could be in your ability to recognize that you don't have it all together. because none of us do. We're all people that need support along the way. I worry that I'll be seen as crazy or aggressive. Yes, as Black men, we can, be worried about how society sees us, how we're coming across, how we're being perceived. But it's the same thing that has affected us throughout the generations. Trying to feel like we're trying to fit in with the mass to come across well, but we're really not coping. If you think about an iceberg, the top seems like everything is good, but underneath there's so much unresolved issues. And if we're trying to fit into society to not look crazy, then we might end up being crazy. Does that make sense? If you're trying to not look crazy, you might end up being crazy because you're not getting the tools and the techniques to support you to navigate through your difficulties. So really learn to understand the different thoughts that are going through your head and how they're making you feel, because that's a simple way to recognize what is happening with you. If you can't recognize the thought, it's always good to get to the feeling. How am I feeling? And once you spot that feeling, if I'm feeling sad, what was I thinking before I started feeling sad? So when you can recognize the feeling, you get to the thinking, and then that will kind of give you some insight into where you're at. But we need to start recognize, why am I feeling this way, and why am I entertaining this thought? Is there any other way to see it? Let's move on. You're on mute, Zora.
Sorry, I'd coughed, so I turned my mic off. What I would like to do is just take a few moments now for people online to grab a pen or a pencil and jot down in the next 2 minutes how they actually feel. If they can grab themselves a pen, paper, and I just want you to think about your emotions and jot those down. And then I'll hand over back to you when you're ready, Antonio.
Yeah,
okay. This will be quite an interesting exercise in terms of tuning in. This is all about your mental health awareness. Lots of us are just coming out of COVID. It's been very stressful. Some people might have lost their jobs in this time, or had a job and certainly don't have one to go back to. They might be feeling stressed, that, how they're going to make ends meet. I'm not quite sure. Someone's writing across our screen here. That shouldn't be happening, but so I do apologise for that. Someone's got one of the annotation buttons on. But yes, if they can just take a moment just to look inwards and just see if they can connect to this feeling of where they're at the moment.
And if people are comfortable, they could also, maybe write it in the chat if they're comfortable to do that.
Yeah, indeed, that would be great, actually. That would be even better still. If you could put in the chat how you're feeling at this moment in time, it'll be quite interesting to sort of see what sort of thoughts come up. Anything? How many people do we have on the platform? 29. So there must be a few people who have some thoughts in terms of where they are emotionally at this moment.
Could be feeling whatever emotions you're experiencing.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, you were feeling away. We have a way of using
Just feel away.
language that actually says something with only a few words, but almost everybody knows what you mean.
Yeah.
Because it's quite hard to articulate it. Yeah. It's like, I don't feel sad. I'm not feeling happy, but I'm just somewhere in the middle. My mum used to say, I used to say, "Hi, Mum, how you doing?" And I used to ring her quite often. And she always used to say, "Me porca, porca." And I thought, what if I said that to anybody else? Nobody else would have a clue. But I knew when my mum said, "I'm feeling porca, porca," it's kind of, well, you know how I feel, you know.
Not so, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm not feeling
You
brilliant.
got
I'm
to be
getting
Caribbean to
old.
get
My
that one.
bones are aching. Yeah, I
Because
never
we
said
have
it to
two
my
people, we
dad.
have three people communicate. We have CB who is feeling some sense of calmness. We have someone feeling a bit stressed at the moment, and we have Shanice feeling exhausted. And these are quite common feeling to have, especially in this time. There's so much different mixed of emotions. Someone feeling sad about the state of marital life. Especially when you're going through those difficulties where you have challenges in relationship, which Zora will speak on later in this presentation, that when we have marital problem, relationship problem, definitely sadness is something you're going to experience. And I see brother JB said blessed and grateful. That sounds like the typical Caribbean man, or kind of talking. Yeah, man, be blessed, I'm grateful and good. And yeah, sometimes we say these, and definitely that could be how we're feeling, but sometimes we might have deeper emotions that we haven't gotten in touch with in this time. I was talking to someone recently. I grew up in the church, and one of the things that I know about Christians is that we always spiritualize our feelings. I'm blessed and highly favored. God is good, but really, what emotions am I feeling at this time? Sometimes we use our culture, sometimes we use our profession, our religion, or faith to kind of mask our true emotion, because that's how we've coped. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it is the best way of getting in touch and being vulnerable with how you're feeling in a given time. Someone else is saying something, feeling sad and frustrated because I remember when my father was unwell. As mentioned, it's hard for black men to express themselves about the health issues. Yeah, these difficulties, affecting us as black men is, as we said at the beginning, is quite colossal. It's a massive thing, and it goes back to this very thing: expressing our emotions. How are we feeling, really? Not just something that will sound good to the ears of others, but really being true to you and how you're feeling. So thank you to everyone who has engaged this process, and it's really good to hear people really being vulnerable about how they're truly feeling, and sharing it in this space, because it's really, sometimes we just need to normalize these things, that people are going through difficult times, and it doesn't matter who you are, what profession you're in, what background, what family you grew up in. Stress and anxiety does not discriminate. Depression does not discriminate. I see lawyers, doctors, nurses, I see all kind of people. So anyone can be going through anything at any time. All right, so we're gonna move on. Is that all right for us to move on?
Are you seeing my chat on your screen?
Yeah, I'm seeing the next slide.
Yeah, you're not seeing it at the chat. Right, perfect. Okay.
Okay, so we're looking at struggling to find the right word. Now, this is something that many of us, and I myself, before I became a therapist, was one of the hardest things for me to do. Really finding the right word to express how I feel. So, developing an emotional vocabulary helps to reduce negative emotions and experiences, because it is re-engages the rational mind. So, a way to do this is to start getting in touch with the words that match how you're feeling. And we have a list of words here that you can actually really learn, and as I like what brother Nathaniel did earlier, which is to break down words by looking at the definition. Google is so accessible that you can just pick out your phone and Google the little emoji with the emotions, and whatever emotion that face comes up with, where you're at. But if whether it is a sad face, a happy face, a gloomy face, you want to be true with what emotion am I experiencing today. When someone asks you how you're feeling, don't always, I'm good. You're not good. Sometimes people say, how are you doing? Maybe you're just feeling empty. I'm actually feeling empty today. And that person might engage in a conversation. Oh, I'm actually feeling that same way too. Or they might say, I've been there, and you can have a conversation, because there's no experience that you're going through that is new to you. Everything that you're going through, somebody else has gone through it before. So I want somebody to understand today that it's okay to express these emotions and to be true with how you're feeling at any given time. Sometimes we're resentful of a relationship that is not going good, and you just feel like, wake up with this man again, or wake up with this woman. You're feeling resentful. Come on, it's just how life is. That's just truthful. Peaceful. Sometimes we're having that inner peace, and we have humility, and sometimes we're just fearful, lonely. Sometimes, society make it such a big thing when we don't achieve certain things at certain age. Like, I meet a lot of young ladies who are 30 or they're late 20s, and they start to feel lonely, like, I'm not going to have a family, not going to have children. Why? Because society tells you that when you're Black, if you reach this age and you haven't gotten married or have children, life is over. Well, that's not the truth. Talking to someone might normalize this for you. And sometimes we need to recognize that what we're going through, we just need to find the word to express it and to be vulnerable and get other people inputs. A safe space, create a safe space where you can talk about these emotions is very, very important. As a therapist and someone who support Black men, I work with a lot of Black men who struggle to actually talk about these things. But the more we have conversation and I allow them to understand how emotions work and how it connects with our thinking, then they get to understand that, okay, if I can get to the emotion, then I can get to the thinking, then I can change the behavior. Why is that so important to understand? If you're not getting to the emotion and you don't understand what you're thinking, you're going to act it out in your behavior. You're going to act that emotion out because you don't understand what you're experiencing. And then what happens is that the thoughts, feelings, behavior, and your physicality work together, how you feel physically in your body. So if I'm not understanding my emotions, I'm going to always get pulled into certain distorted thinking. That can then feed into me doing the wrong behavior. And then I can start to feel some physical way in my body that I don't understand. And I'm like, maybe I'm sick or maybe something's going to happen. Well, that's just because you don't understand your emotions and your thinking. And that's why it's so important for us as Black men to start finding the words to express how we're feeling.
Right. Actually, could I just ask for those of our guests if they could identify with any of the words that are on the screen, and if they can, just to be honest, I mean, no one's going to judge them, if there is any of the feelings in terms of the words. And I think the other thing we need to also make just be clear about is that there is sometimes a misinterpretation, even when a word is used to express your emotion. Whoever it is that's hearing it might not actually be interpreting it as you mean it to be. So you might be annoyed, for example, and there is an assumption of someone interpreting how you feel when you say you're feeling annoyed. They may not actually take on what you mean by being annoyed. And so when you're saying certain words, there is an assumption that whoever it is that is receiving that word will be feeling or picking up exactly how you feel. So could I ask our guests to just pop any of those words that they might feel or identify with in the chat, and we can obviously just see what the mood is in the room, so to speak. We've got a couple of responses. Let's see what's coming up. Annoyed, interesting. Is that hot stepper? Would you like to expand? Oh, quite a number of people. 2 people have come up with being annoyed. Do you want to, are you, I'm hoping you're not muted, nobody's muted. Do you want to expand on that, Shanice and Hot Stepper? Do you want to unmute yourselves? Do you want to talk about it, or do you want to skip it? Okay, it's not a problem. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. Are you ready, Antonia?
Yes, I think it's good, Brother Nate.
Right, okay. Let's just, all right, let's just, okay, go. Right. Someone's doing some scribbling across our screen. I think the annotation button is on. If you can make sure that is switched off, or if you want to undo the annotation that's been made, we should be able to get rid of some of this scribbles across our screen. So, Brother Nathaniel, you're going to talk about spiritual resourcefulness and the importance of it. Are you ready?
Yes, most definitely. And just thank you again, both Sister Zora and Brother Antonio. You know, it's learning all the time, or relearning. And one of the critical parts we have to learn about is the spirit, is spirituality, and connecting with your spirituality, and spirit in its pure definition. As I've mentioned, I'll try and keep it consistent. The non-physical part of a person. It's the seat of emotions and character. And then when we think about spirit a bit more in the religious concept, I guess, that takes us to another level of that which is beyond us, yeah, we could say. But it isn't. Brother Antonio just mentioned of the different articulations of emotion. And what I was picking up for me was, we often say automated ways of responding, as what Brother Antonio was touching on, like, oh yeah, how you feeling? I'm not too bad. I'm not too bad. You know, we've got to really break it down. So, or I'm okay. You know, if we are kinder to ourselves, we'll really be in a position to articulate how we feel. And that's where the spirit really does kind of set in. So your spirituality is how you choose to live a life of faith, even if you're not religious. And I would say, before religion, there was spirituality, and there was thousands upon thousands of years. Those that know me know I'm passionate about our story, our history. And there's thousands upon thousands of years of spirit or spirituality growth, nurturing, connecting to that deeper power that is in sync with the higher power. Well, what's that higher power? And I would say that's part of what we can comprehend as the universe, but we're all connected to that. And when we think of spirit, it is about that consciousness. It's about how you feel. And that's it. The other point I was going to make is, so we say automated ways of expressing our emotions. I'm not too bad. I'm doing okay. But the other thing I make mistake of it all the time, is mistaking a feeling for a thought. Actually describing something which is a thinking, but it's not actually saying how you feel. And that's where we can get stumbled upon as well. So we can turn to, as we know in these times of prayer, for guidance on what you can do for you. And when we're often in that state of prayer, some people may call it meditation, mindfulness. I know very much in different African communities, it's libation. We often are in that state, that trancing state of where we are really looking at our belief and our faith to take us to a place where we're going to almost make declaration and have that honest conversation with self, with the higher source, and as we know from biblical texts, it says faith without works is dead. So we can pray upon it all we want. We can have that desire to wish for certain things to happen, to hope it's going to happen, and those are integral key parts, but it's not that alone. We need the faith and we need the works. We need the action. Faith without action we're not going anywhere with it. So talking to the pastor is not getting mental health care, and I would say not getting mental health care alone. That's it can be helpful, but not the sole part of it. I think we do have anyway, we'll give it no attention. Let's see, but we when we look for the spiritual resourcefulness, we're looking at the daily practice of gratitude. And it was mentioned earlier at the event I was in, being amongst those that were really taking time to stop, pause, think about how you feel. There are many things that we can feel grateful for, and it's not to kind of take us into that kind of kumbaya, everything's okay, everything's la-di-da. It's not, let's be honest. But there are certain things that are going on around us that are both positive and negative. It's down to us to choose where we put our focus on. And that's where the idea of practicing gratitude can take place, you know, including improving our relationships, reducing our anger, increasing our empathy. These are ways that can help our well-being, help us to recognize what we feel grateful for. And so there's a interesting clip from an author and inspirational speaker, European, by the name of Simon Sinek, and he speaks about simple acts of kindness. He spoke about the release, and the science that's behind it as well is so intertwined with spirituality. It's amazing. So showing kindness, holding a door for someone, smiling, what it actually does scientifically is it induces oxytocin, which is a chemical hormone in the body, which allows us to start feeling less anxious, in fact, having a better and more positive mental attitude. So the impact it has is on the person who holds the door for that person, the person who comes through the door, and the person who's watching that take place. And the interesting thing is that it becomes contagious, especially when it's an act of service, an act of kindness without looking for something in return. You're able to then have that contagious factor where you're thinking, wait a minute, I want to go and do that for somebody else. So there is the beauty in gratitude. There is the beauty in kind acts, as simplistic as it is. And in this difficult environment that we're functioning in, it sometimes can be hard to be kind. I know when I'm driving from point A to point B in my car in the busy traffic in London, gratitude can be difficult, but you have to dive within, you know, and it is good to have others around you. We spoke about not doing this alone. So show gratitude to others, be the master of your peace. You know, patience is really about being in certain situations and knowing that you can still be in control of your thoughts and feelings despite the difficult situation. So getting to the root of the matter, the core root is that there is no shame in asking, reaching out for help. And us as Black men, we talk again to our brothers, our Black African brothers, is that, you know, we can sometimes feel the pressure of the environment we're in, the society we're navigating through, and we do not impose unrealistic expectations on yourself. That's not what we're wanting us to do, but to really recognize that we're not alone, you know, and we're going through something which is there's a commonality amongst not just us as Black men, not just us as an African global community, but the world strong, you know, and we have to acknowledge that. The more that we realize and the more we have spaces like this, sometimes we call them emotional emancipation circles or spaces, healing spaces. We realize just recognizing you're not the only one dealing with this and that you can get help just by hearing someone else's experience can be so powerful. Okay, so next slide, yeah. And applying that self-care. As I said, I come from background in mental health from the Southwest London St George's Mental Health Trust, and there are many ways in which we can go about it, but there are key points that we can think to kind of plan out. Even if right now we're not feeling like we're caring for ourselves, it is about these 4 steps. You know, it's not to give up on self-care when you need it the most. It's about really recognizing that if you're not feeling right, we've got to do something about it. We've got to give ourselves that time. We must, number 1, plan ahead, and we must plan some more. We must, and in that planning, we must then allocate that time, always make the time. You know, some of the sisters and brothers here, I've said quite proudly, since the 1st of January, I've made it my business to go round Clapham Common Park and do a walk. Sometimes it's a jog, but it's a walk. and really dive into what am I thinking? How am I feeling? Can I listen to something that's going to uplift me? Can I look towards planning ahead? You know, and sometimes can I just be in silence, look up in the sky and see how beautiful the gratitude factor again, how beautiful the nature is around me. And we've done that as well. I have to say, it was even more filling my cup. I have to make that point. Sister Zora, the walk that we went through,
Yes.
you know, those simple things of planning to go on a walk with other people who are like-minded and saying, right, well, we're going to do this. Amazing how it can really impact just taking in the fresh air. And it again, I always feel, oh, Nat, you're just being all kumbaya and like a bit cheesy. No, trust me.
Yeah. I'd like to elaborate a bit more on that, if you don't mind. I mean, you touched on it, and I thank you very much for joining us. What Brother Nathaniel is basically talking about is an event that I organised a couple of weeks back, and it was Walk and Talk Your Way to Romance. And it was open to members of our community, single men and single women. And really what I wanted to do as a health practitioner and as someone who's got a service where I'm trying to engage.
This is what you're supposed to do.
Black men and women from an emotional perspective. I arranged this event to walk from Brixton to Dulwich, which is only 5 miles. I say only 5 miles. But it really did go so quickly, didn't it? I mean, if you do not walk on your own, we walked as a group. There were about 12 of us in total. And I made sure that everyone had a chance to speak to each other along the way. And before we knew it, we stopped and we had a coffee and some cakes and some treats. That was sort of midway. And before we knew it, we had walked 5 miles. Now, if someone had said to me on any other day, we were blessed because the day before, I think we'd had this series of mini hurricanes around the country, and they were telling everybody to stay in. And I was wondering whether or not I should cancel the event. And I thought, you know, this is England, you know, no 2 days are ever the same. So I'm not going to cancel it. Let's just see whether or not, you know, the weather's good enough for us to continue walking. Well, you know, like you say, because we were all of the same frame of mind, it turned out to be fantastic because we were doing so many things on so many levels. We were communicating, we were relating, we were getting fit, we're having fun, and you know, all the oxytocin was all flowing. So, you know, we've got another event coming up. So for any of you that are interested, do let me know. It's on Eventbrite now. There is a small fee to cover the cost for the leader and the teas and the coffees. But I mean, I so enjoyed it. I mean, what were your thoughts? You are the only man, I should also mention, who, again, you had the courage to step out of your comfort zone. I had no idea how many people would turn up. And in fact, it was an absolute joy to see you. So just let our guests know in terms of the outcomes, what your thoughts were.
I think Nate's internet is a bit unstable.
Is he still there? Oh, there he is, yeah. How are you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I apologize. I'll just change location.
Yeah, no worries. I'm in a part of the world where it's not brilliant either. So what were your thoughts about that event in terms of self-care and the walk? I mean, I take my hat off to you. You had no idea you were going to be the only young man there. So, you know, you were surrounded by all these wonderful women who, like myself, quite mature, but loving every minute of it.
I felt lucky. I felt like I was, you know, one of the fortunate ones. And I did, you didn't see it, but I was like, yes, there's no other guys number one. But no, in all honesty, it's the simplistic things, you know, being able to connect with others, being able to hear other people's stories. I've made it my pledge this year of really recognizing the value. And that's one of the things I personally planned ahead, is that connecting, this is who I am, this is my value, recognizing that family, recognizing who you are, the journeys we've all been through, and that we're here today. That's the testimony. And we must accept that. We must know that as well as asking for help, we're also helping others, even in the state of dismay, of feeling we're at rock bottom. You connecting with someone else, they're going to learn something through that. Okay, so sorry for taking up the
time. You're opening up when you don't even realizing it. You know, as you're walking, someone's talking to you, and you're talking about things that probably, if you probably sat and had a coffee with a stranger, you wouldn't have ever sort of considered talking to them about some of the subjects. So yeah, thank you so much. Right, we've got some Leon who's got his hand up. Hi, Leon, what would you like to say?
Greetings. Just want to say first of all, thank you for arranging
hello,
tonight.
Young man, I didn't recognise the Thompson. How are you?
But I'm very well, thank you. My question was, it's very simple. You make it sound like brother that was in some kind of problem. I don't see no problem because he was the most blend. Yeah, to be the only man champion. He's a soldier. and he's going to represent every time. I just can't see where the problem is.
Yeah. Well, you see, the thing is, like I say, we can find an excuse for everything. When it comes to exercise, we Black people, we need a nudge to get off the sofa. And when it is like -2 outside, the last thing you want to be doing is thinking about going for a walk. What the hell? You know, I'm thinking to myself, Black people ain't going to get out of their house to come do no walk on a Saturday in -2. You know, but I was blessed to find that there are a number of walkers, women especially, who will walk come rain, shine, hurricane, and they don't care. You know, there's nothing that's going to stop them from walking. And
it's easily possible. And if you're with like-minded people,
yes,
you know what you're going to get.
It was about being with like-minded people.
I couldn't see Brother Nat said, hang on a second, there's no other men here. I'm going to have to go back home.
No,
it was the first time I met Brother Nat, so it was a breath of fresh air. It was lovely to see him, and he bounced between the ladies and just loved every minute. I could see he said,
I can always send this man to represent. Okay.
We'll see you next time then. We'll see you next time.
Let me know when it is. I'll check my dates and see if it's possible. If it's possible, I'll be there.
Wonderful. Well, there's just a couple of comments in the box. It's going, yeah, well done, Brother Nat. Well, we salute you anyway. Someone else is Ruena, I think that is, said connecting with nature is a beautiful way to practice mindfulness. Absolutely. And Val says it's an absolutely great idea. Well, folks, watch this space because there'll be plenty more on the way. I'm a great walker. I live up in the Midlands, on the sort of verge of the countryside. So I try to get out as much as I can. So on to the next slide. Anybody else want to make a comment whilst we're here and having a temporary pause? No? All right then. So, Antonio.
So on the back of self-care, it's so important that we then continue to look at how to, prioritize that joy that we want to have. There's a difference between happiness and joy. Happiness comes with circumstantial things. I got a new car, a new job, things are working out. But joy is something that it's a built-in thing that we acquire whether or not we have things going how we want it to go. And we can create the atmosphere to have our inner joy. We can make time for our hobbies and make time for inner peace. One of the things that I purpose myself, I said there are 24 hours in every day, and I'm going to give myself 1 hour every day out of that 24. And what do? I like to go to the gym. So I'm ensure that I go to the gym. That's my 24-hour. I have twins. I have another daughter, and I have wife, and I have work. But I need my hour. And you have to look at how to structure your day so you have your time. Self-care requires you still managing your responsibility, but taking care of yourself. And a lot of time as men, we tend to want to fix everyone's life and try to support everyone else, but we don't give ourselves the support that we need. You have to learn to give yourself a high five. You wake up in the morning, you give yourself a high five, tell yourself it's going to be a great day, and make a plan as to how you're going to navigate through your day. So try new things that will spark your interest. Sometimes we get pulled into a routine that is not working for us. As a therapist, I support patients to work on 3 areas of their life: routine, necessary, and pleasurable. Your routine things are things that you have to do daily. Don't get hooked into your routine that you don't prioritize pleasurable things. What are some pleasurable things that you can add to your day? If it is going for a walk, if it's going fishing, if it's going connecting with a friend, going to play domino. I know black men like to play dominoes. Well, make that something that you do. Find that those hobbies that will release those happy hormones, because the reality is that you don't see, but there's things in your body called hormones. And if you're always stressed, you're going to release the stress hormones, and those stress hormones are going to cause it to feel overwhelmed and cause it to your mental health to be affected. So you also have to think about, what activities do I need to do to support my mind to be on par with the life that I want. It's not beneficial to have goals but don't have the mindset to achieve the goals. What do I mean by this? It's not just saying that I want to achieve the house, the car, but then you don't have the mental health to support it. So that's why one of my motto, and the motto for Speak Black Man, is your mental health is your greatest wealth. You have to invest in that. Let's move on. So, how to make therapy work when you need it. Now, we've already outlined at the beginning that Black men are least likely to access psychological support. And the fact of the matter is that we are most impacted. The statistics show that so many of us as Black men struggle with our mental health, but we're least likely to get support. Ideally, we need to seek therapy before a crisis arises, so you can learn skills to manage life rather than hoping that things will work out. Some of us, we know that we're struggling with something, and then we're thinking, well, it might change. Tomorrow might be a different day. Well, if you've gone through few days of having the same difficulty, well, it might be time to know, find a space that can support you to navigate through it. So don't think that you have the tool. And I think of this analogy. If we have a car, you'll never hear a sound in your car and then leave it to say it's going to fix itself. You're going to take that car to the mechanic because you're curious to find out what that sound is. The engine start to act up. You act up. You want to go and check it out. Or you might try to fix it yourself, but then you recognize that you don't have the skill set, especially with these cars that are so modernized these days, where everything is about technology. That's how the mind is. If your mind start to operate in a way that it's not how it functions normally, it needs servicing. Just as how the car needs servicing, your mind requires that servicing. And what therapy does, therapy gives you a space to be vulnerable, to allow your mind to be serviced. How do you service your mind in therapy? Therapy gives you a space to now recognize that your beliefs, your thinking oftentimes are not serving you. So the way you see the situation oftentimes is not, it's not the situation that affects you, it's the way you see it. You might be going through one situation and I'm going through the same situation, but I'm on top of things, I'm good. But you're seeing that same situation through the lens of stress, anxiety, depression. But therapy helps you to now start to learn the tools to challenge those thinking and ask yourself, how can I see things differently? How can I do things differently? And the good thing about therapy, it's all about collaboration. The therapist will not do anything that they themselves would not do. And so therapy is a space for you to discover yourself in a way in which you have somebody who is championing you, helping you to discover you in that process. And the therapist work for you. You don't work for the therapist. Remember that when you go to therapy, the therapist is working for you. So if you want to fire them, you can. If you want to entertain them, you can. It's really your decision. So make it a duty to not just think that therapy is a bad thing, or if you want to find culturally sensitive therapists, there are a few of us out here, quite a few of culturally sensitive therapists nowadays that you can get support from. Don't dismiss therapy. So common misconception about therapy are that you are crazy. No, in fact, you don't have to wait until you have a mental health difficulty to go to therapy. As we spoke about, all of us are carrying around post-traumatic slave syndrome. Some of us, if we haven't gone through those things, we're carrying things from our parents and our grandparents and beliefs that are not working for us. We might need a space to update those beliefs. We might need a space to challenge those beliefs. And another thing to keep in mind, there's something that all of us have that are called core beliefs. Core beliefs are the messages that we've gained throughout our early life or a long journey of life that we hold on to. And the core beliefs that we have then turns into rules and assumptions. Rules and assumptions then determine how you live your life. Let's give an example. What if a core belief for you is that I'm not good enough or I am a failure? The rule that you might have, don't apply for that job. Don't try for that opportunity. Why? Because it's going to cause me to fail. Now, the important thing is that rules are made and rules can be changed. When government have rules that are not working, what do? They debate it and they create new rules. You have to look at the rules that you're living by. Some people have some rules that I can't achieve anything, I can't do this. You have to start debating these things and take it to court. Would this stand in a court? This idea that I have about myself, because sometimes the way we see ourselves is not how everybody else see us. Even as Black men, many of the views we have about ourselves is misconception. It's not true. It's not true. You know how we were made to see ourselves growing up. It's not the reality, but we live as if it's our reality and we make it our truth. Therapy can help you to shift those distorted thinking and develop new ways of seeing things. So you may prefer to ponder what your life would have to look like for you to be to seriously consider therapy. No, you don't have to wait until you're in a crisis or trying to think how your life is going to play out. Therapy is just simply helping you to be in touch with you. So act promptly. Problems are harder to address once they become serious. That's the truth. I've seen it so many times, and it's so heartbreaking for me because I see so much of us as Black men that could get help at this early stage, and we wait until it becomes psychosis or real schizophrenia, some real damaging thing that sometimes it's hard to come back from. So I'm saying, don't ignore that little stress that you think is just stress. Don't ignore that challenge that you think, oh, I can go through this. Start being vulnerable and get help now. Because if we don't do that, we're going to find ourselves constantly generating more and more space within the mental health space, such as only time Black men, the statistics shows that Black men only get in touch with therapy mostly through the prison service or through the police service. Why? Because we wait until there is a breakdown of our mental health before we get support. So why wait? Follow your gut insight and listen to your spirit, as was said earlier. If something is wrong, seek help.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Just a few comments in the chat. Brother Nat said it's true, cars are serviced annually and we too should seek therapy routinely also before things get too bad. Rowena, I think that's probably, I apologize if I pronounced it incorrectly. She says prevention is always better than cure. Again, Brother Nathaniel's come back saying, indeed, I think that's Ace.
I
do apologize, right. And Rowena says, yes, it needs to be addressed as early as possible. We can prevent severe issues and distress later. And very much as Antonio said, by ignoring these symptoms and the signals means that paranoia, psychosis, the schizophrenia, all the sort of really challenging things then start kicking in. And certainly from what I've seen in the few weeks that I've been working for Birmingham and Solihull Mental Health Trust is that you then, or what tends to happen is that the aggression then kicks in because Black men don't feel they're being understood, and they end up in rather than going down the mental health pathway, they then end up going into the prison pathway, and that process is so much harsher, and they are much less likely to apply the therapy that our men need. So I'll just go on to the next slide. This is for you, Antonio.
Okay, so there's a question that was addressed that I really want to speak to. How they said there is a lot of great content tonight. How do we encourage more Black men to seek therapy? Now, I think one of the way to kind of get Black men to access therapy is to start to normalize the conversation of therapy in our everyday life. You know, I see there's a growing trend, especially on social media, where people say my therapist say this, my therapist say that, and we need to start having this conversation. Many of us, we go to therapy and we hide it. Oh, we don't tell people that, you know, I've gone to therapy to work through this, I've gone to therapy to deal with that. When Black men recognize that people go to therapy if they have struggles, then it becomes easier. And really following sharing content that normalize these conversation. Mental health conversation should become an everyday conversation for everyone who is on this platform. Your way of supporting Black men is to allow mental health conversation to become an everyday conversation, not just something that we have when we have these platforms. You know, normalize the conversation that it's okay to be stressed. It's okay to, you know, to feel these emotions, but it's also okay to go and get help. You know, if we start to have more conversation, I think therapy will become more accessible for more Black men. So how to find the right therapeutic help? If you are seeking privacy and concern your business might get leak out, you know, you can contact Black Agent Therapy Network, and there's so much other services out there. You know, if you're in the UK, I know there might be people in different places. If you're simply in the UK and you're having difficulties with your mental health, every single IAP service have an online referral process. If you don't know IAP, it is Improving Access to Psychological Service. Every borough in the UK has an IAP service. It is free. It's funded by the government. What you can do is to go online, make a referral online, or you can go through your GP. Your GP can actually make the referral for you or signpost you to make the referral. And once you do that, there's some time of a long waiting list depending on the borough that you're in. They will contact you for an initial assessment. And once they contact you for initial assessment, you might start at step 2. And step 2 is simply where you're getting brief psychological intervention, maybe a 6-week therapy with a therapist, maybe online therapy, whatever they assess that might be helpful for you. But step 2 is really mild depression or anxiety, stress, those kind of things that you can get support for. If it's more complex, where you're having things around OCD, PTSD, or different more complex mental difficulties, you might be stepped up to step 3, and that's where you'd see a therapist like myself, who is a CBT therapist, and we can support you for about 12 weeks. Some service can go, they're funded to go more than 12 weeks. They can go up to 20 sessions depending on the funding that they have to support you. Don't quote me at that one. Most services about 12 sessions. But there's help available here in the UK if you need support. Other than that, there are many private psychotherapists that you can Google. If you want to go and find a private psychotherapist, you can go into the BABCP website, which I'm a part of. You'll see all the accredited therapists in the UK. That's the that's a service that looks into that accredited therapist. Don't just go to any kind of person. They might not have the tools. Not everyone that say they offer therapy is actually accredited or have the skills to do it. So you want to go on the official government website, and you can find therapists. There are also social media platforms that tailor their content specifically to mental health. My platform, Speak Black Man, also gives content that support Black men. I also do one-to-one work with Black men, and also do things like what we're doing tonight, presentation. So there are many different ways to access support. And as you see, they can see your GP, and also as the other options that I've just made mention of.
And before we move on, I would just like to also add that it's very likely that you'll be referred in the first instance to a therapist that is available in your locality. Having had therapy myself, not for depression, but for a relationship when I was going through my divorce, I was initially referred to a relationship counsellor, and she was clearly someone who knew her stuff, but she was this wizened little elderly English woman, and she had no idea or could begin to understand the challenges that I was going through in my relationship. And in order for my ex-husband to be at the sessions, we had to change. And I said, whilst we had to change because he obviously he was working during the day. So I started off my sessions that were during the day because that was convenient for me. And when I did sort of say, look, we're going to have to need evening sessions now for my husband to come along as he was then. And I did hint that having someone from a similar cultural background to me would be preferable. And I did back then. Now this was quite a few years ago. This was back in the early 90s. And I was luckily appointed a counsellor who was of West Indian background. And I have to say, the sessions from there on were a breeze. I didn't have to say anything. I just walked in the room. She looked at me. She looked at my ex-husband. And I just knew that I didn't have to say anything for half the time, because there was this sense of knowingness, a sense of understanding what my challenges were. And it was just such a relief. I could open up. I knew when I said something, she didn't think I was going mad. And at the end of the year, it was the best thing that I had ever done. I learned so much about myself in the process. So if any of you are thinking about therapy, it should, the fact that you can get it free on the NHS as well is absolutely amazing. In America, everything has to be paid for. That's why they talk about their therapists, because they're all paying for it. Here, you should get good therapeutic intervention and support, which comes under the NHS. So just a little bit there. Thank you.
Just one other thing too before we go on, Zora. I mean, one thing about the NHS, as much as we sometimes, beat the NHS, most of the evidence-based therapy that we have here in the UK are the best in the world.
Yeah,
most of the therapists, the intervention that they use in America and so forth, it's taken from research done here in the UK, such as people like David Clark and those people. Most of the interventions are the best in the world. So don't underestimate the support you can get from therapy here in the UK.
Right, amazing, thank you. Right, well, I am very conscious of the time and we're having a great time. So a couple of people have just arrived, so I'll just allow them into the room. So, Brother Nathaniel, are you there?
Yes, loud and clear. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, okay. So someone's got their annotation button on. If they could just undo the annotation that's come up so we can get rid of these squiggles. It's either yourself, Antonio, or Brother Nathaniel. Let's just check. Someone's put something in the chat. Raina again, she says, NHS can be great, but often due to waiting lists being so long, the need can pass for those that need it at the time. Yeah, and I think you've mentioned that already, haven't you, Antonio?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak just very briefly about that, because as much as you're encouraging of the NHS, and I think, in all organizations, there's going to be strengths and shortcomings. Mm-hmm. We cannot ignore the statistics of the negative and sometimes harmful experiences that our people from Black and ethnic minority, people of color communities face. That's a real thing, and we cannot neglect that. So I think we, as much as encouraging those to engage with the NHS, we want to also talk about what we do for ourselves. I'm a big follower of Marcus Garvey, and he always says, when you rely upon another race to look after you in so many ways, then expect that not to be the case in so many ways. So with that said, someone like, and I see Rahina's got her hand up, Purple Cloud Therapy. I know a brother called A. Scott Talk, and he offers online counseling. There's a sister called Danielle who does Black men's emotional emancipation circles, women's emotional emancipation circles, couples and singles and elders circles. And the point I'm getting at is, as much as you want to take advantage of the NHS, it's what we pay for. I'm also mindful we can be harmed in those spaces, even by people that look like us, regardless of whether they look like us. It is a system, it is a structure, and it's designed in a way. And so with that said, all those services that I mentioned, I'm sure Rahina will put her details in. I advocate, whilst you're on the waiting list for 2 years, waiting for your therapy, then engage in our own run services by us, for us, with us. And so there is, I'll just reach this brother called Ace. He's got support for progress online counseling, a free service. You pick up the phone, you can call up. And I think sometimes we need to look to our own as much as we're looking in the NHS, regardless of whether that NHS worker is a professional who looks like us or not. So I see the two. Do we want to take those two hands before I get into life balance briefly?
Sorry, was there?
There's Rahina and then Suzette.
All right, two people have got their hands raised.
Yeah. Quickly, if you wanted to make your point. I know, Rahina, if you wanted to unmute briefly.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Brother Nate. I just wanted to say on the back end of that, because I am also a psychotherapist and I work a lot with Caribbean, African and Asian people. And I also work I have my private practice, Purple Cloud Therapy, but I also work on contracting with the NHS and the IAP services. So I agree that as much as the NHS is brilliant, and with all the referrals that I get, and I cover quite a few counties, about 95% of the people that come through, if not more, is people that are white. So out of all the people that are referred, it does beg, like the question does arise that, you know, how comes any people of color are not coming through? And there is a problem with the referral as much as the waiting list in the NHS. And yeah, I do agree that we do need to rely on that, because some people have waited 6 months, if not more. So if the need is now and someone's in desperate situation, we know that if someone's mental health deteriorates, people of color, the repercussions for that is far greater than somebody that isn't. So this is what I wanted to say, that yes, NHS can be great and useful if it is accessed and available as soon as, but if you're waiting, you know, 6 months, 9 months, and even that, you might not even be you might not even be able to get at the top of that list, because I do feel that there is a lot of discrimination with referrals as well. So yeah, and we need to bear that in mind, especially if we're becoming reliable on the NHS and we're trying to get free. Because for me, you know, if there's a physical health issue, you would go to the doctor straight away. With a mental health issue, we know, why are we relying on free? If you know, because physically, if you're unwell and, you know, you would go to the chemist, you'll go and purchase some medicine if you can't get a doctor's appointment, if you can remedy it. So with mental health, why are we relying on free? Then sometimes even privately, because we can't see it. A lot of times people don't see the importance of it and how important it is as well. And they sit with it. And it's not easy for us, you know, people of, you know, African, Caribbean or Asian communities to talk about mental health as well. So to rely on that.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, you're quite right. And with COVID as well, that the waiting list is going to be even longer than it has been. But I think it's very much a regional thing in terms of getting access to mental health. If you are in a part of the world where the waiting list isn't that long, you'll get seen much more quickly. But clearly, if you are in a part of the world where the referrals are quite high, the waiting list will be much longer. Could I just bring in Suzette now, who's got her hand up? Suzette, yes.
Yes, so I suppose I'm going to echo a lot of what's been said, and what I said earlier, I still stand by in terms of, I think we have to take more responsibility for our mental health. And I totally agree that I think the NHS is struggling, and yes, it is a postcode lottery, but it's not just that alone. It's just not able to cope. It's not resourced anyway. But in terms of Black people, particularly Black men, I don't think it always serves them. And ultimately, quite often, things get so bad that they get into secondary care. And I see it because I work in secondary care, how damaging that can be in itself. So what is great about tonight, it's really been good to see the amount of content I just put that you guys have, and that there is a lot of Black organizations that it's now providing therapy, and it's how do we help particularly Black men access this and make it affordable, because that's the other thing. We have to be realistic about the cost of therapy if it's going to be private rather than relying on the NHS. So I think it's really been good. I'm glad I sort of stuck around and listened to all of it because it's been great.
Well,
of course,
don't
it's
go,
great.
because we're not quite finished yet.
No, I
We're
know.
nearly there, but thank
But
you
you
for
see
that.
what I'm saying in terms of us taking responsibility.
Yeah.
And yes, the NHS, we are lucky to have it. I'm not knocking it. I've worked in it for several years myself, but I don't think it always serves us, you know, in lots of ways. It doesn't always fully understand some of the cultural stuff that we go through, that causes the traumas, that causes the mental health that are experienced within our community. So I think it's for us to take it forward.
And there's more people that need training. I think and then I can pick this on. Sorry.
Oh dear, can you mute?
That person. I think, you know, in terms of, we need more psychotherapists, we need more people training up. You know, as a Samaritan, when I used to go and hit the lines, I was always once again surrounded by retired English people. And when we had these real critical, urgent calls coming through, I could see for a fact that, you know, the people on the lines, as you know, thankful that I am that they're giving their free time. The long and short of it is, half of them don't understand our community. They don't understand the language. They don't understand the culture, and they're giving responses that only really are relevant to their life experience. So, you know, whilst we're not trained to give advice, I could see even the feedback they were giving was totally inappropriate. But thank you very much, Suzette. We do need more of professional psychotherapists in the field. Thank you. Moving on to this gentleman. I can't see your name, I'm sorry.
Danny, brother Danny.
Is it? Is it him? I can't see a name on the screen.
Yeah. Brother Danny, if you want to unmute and briefly give your contribution. I'll try and do.
Is he unmuted?
Yeah, because I was just listening to some of your chat on the texts, what was put in, and there was somebody what says that they feel upset that there was man on this group. Is this a group for just women or man and woman?
What group are you referring to?
What I'm on now, your group. I've been there from the beginning, and you know, you do your texts, what you can do down below.
Yeah, the chat. Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Right. It's an open forum. I mean.
Yeah, but I read it, and someone written on that they were upset that there is man joining this group.
Oh. No, sorry, can I interrupt there? That was mine. I don't know if I wrote it wrong. I said I was not upset.
Yeah, but that's what you wrote. You know, I made a note.
No, more men. Sorry, let me just finish.
Sorry.
More men. I said that I didn't say disappointed. I used a different word. That there weren't more men, not that there were less. It's more I would have preferred. That's all I said.
Okay, yeah. I hear that.
I might have written it wrong, but I'm pretty
sure. But it wasn't more men. You understand?
Okay. Apologies for that.
Okay, I couldn't understand it. Okay, I'm okay.
Anything else you'd like to say whilst you're here?
Yeah, I mean, because me and my friend is doing a group. Right? It's called Wake Up Brothers. You know, as it's him what told me about this group and blah blah blah. You know, I thought I'd join it and listen. You know, it's very interesting because I find listening to you, it gives me idea for the group we're doing. This group, what you're talking about, gives me a very, very much a lot of idea of what you're doing. And plus you've got professionals around you. I'm just trying to get a name of the professional people to contact and blah, blah, blah. You
There
understand?
will be contact numbers at the end of the presentation that you can take down or take a screenshot or take a
Yeah.
photo. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
give you all of that as we go through.
Yeah, because I just think as Black people, we need more of this going on. Black people to be aware of things we can get to, not just the NHS.
Yeah.
You understand me? I find that very interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
indeed.
that's all I've got to say, yes?
Thank you so much. Hang on,
Yeah.
and I apologise. We're running slightly late, later than the 2 hours, which is
Right.
always the way. If you can just, I think by the time we'll have give everyone the opportunity to have a talk, we'll probably be finishing closer to 8:30. So if you can just hang on and just enjoy. And if you've got any favourite programmes, go and put them on and go and take them rather than leave us. So yeah, let's just continue.
Okay, I'll be there because I find it very interesting. Very interesting.
Wonderful, wonderful, good.
Okay, all right, then, thank you.
Lovely.
And I would go on your walks with you. Okay.
It would be lovely to see you. Okay, the next one's coming up is on the 2nd of April. So we're leaving from Brixton again to Dulwich. We're doing the same walk.
Oh, you can tell that other man he ain't going to be the only man.
Damn it.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so where are we now? What you can
Thank you.
do?
Life balance. Life balance.
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. So, okay, what are you ready?
Yeah, most definitely. And I think, yeah, definitely. I just want to acknowledge as well, it's really nice to see more people put in their information and their comments in the chat. And actually, I'm seeing a few more faces as well. So, you know, it's hard for us to kind of open up and show what I like to hear is, and I'm starting to see more, is our value. We all have value. We all have something that we can contribute. And in this segment, as we come to the end of it, it is talking about how we connect, how we achieve, and how we enjoy, you know. But what you can do, as it's clearly saying here, what you can do if death seems like the best end to pain, us as men, fortunately, well, I shouldn't say fortunately, but we're not the highest statistic, but we are the group which has the highest percentage of suicide rates in the world. You know, yes, it's in Europe quite heavily, but you know, we're not far behind. And so we have to think before it gets to that critical point, that crisis point, as we've been discussing, and we've spoken about early intervention and prevention. But what happens when it does get to that point, when you can, what you can do if death seems like the best end to pain, when death's at the door? And it is about really thinking and feeling and staying on track. So if we cast our mind back to the earlier parts of this presentation, which I will just cheekily say, I think we may need to share this again, you know, and connect again. But just the fact that we have to take that time. Remember what we said about the simple steps, about planning ahead. Plan to have some time to think. Robert Antonio explained, he takes an hour out. You know, he's got family, he's got his children, but he makes sure, in order for him to be able to provide or look after or support and work in tandem with family, with colleagues, with your friends, you need to protect yourself. You must have that time to, even if it's 15 minutes. And what you must do in that time is got to feed you positively. So thinking and feeling is key. And in that, you must claim your truth. It's about being honest that you are feeling overwhelmed, that this thing is bothering you. You're human. And yes, you can potentially do superhuman things. The melanin can probably, you know, really confirm and validate that. Yes, you can do some superhuman things, but we are human. There are times when we become overwhelmed. But we must be okay with saying no also as well. When we are feeling overwhelmed, and I need to take this advice, you're feeling overwhelmed and yet someone and then a group or an organization come up to you and say, oh, we need you, can you do this as well? You've got to be able to stand on your 2 feet and say no. But I can appreciate love how, you know, getting that across and articulating that can be difficult. And so that's where you need to take the time again to think and think carefully how you want to phrase this, what you're actually feeling. I tell you what, I'll just drop this. Along with that daily walk, I also do a journal. But I'm not one, by the end of the day, I don't want to write. So I just send a voice note to myself. Almost a bit like, bear with me, it's a bit of my nerdy side. Star Trek, Captain Picard would normally say, what did he say? Stargate, you know, journal 1045, and then give the whole outlook of the whole recording of the day. That sometimes can help you digest what's gone good, what's gone bad, what you've got to look forward to, what you need to take care of. But it's just the way. And what I find myself doing is talking about what I'm thinking about that situation and how I'm feeling. Give yourself that space to have those good days and have those bad days and reflect upon them. Abandon those feelings of guilt, you know. It is a matter of making sure that we acknowledge them, but we don't let that become our whole forefront in how we're thinking. And because again, how we're thinking is going to affect how we feel. And if we're feeling that sense of guilt, then it's going to impact on what we do, or furthermore, what we don't do, you know. So it's really imperative that we acknowledge it, but abandon those feelings, those negative feelings. And yeah, highly important. Over to Brother Antonio.
Thank
For
you.
this
Thank
last
you so much
segment,
for that. Mhm.
no worries.
I know time is far spent, so I'm just going to run through goal setting. I think for me, it's so important that we really talk about goals, because while we can be talking about our mental health, it should be a goal for us to prioritize our mental health. And for me, I strongly believe in writing the vision and making it known. I believe that, 2010, I had my first encounter of writing down goals for my life. And I can tell you, everything that I've written since 2010 became my reality, because I visualize myself doing it, I see myself living it, and I make myself do it. My feeling is not a great indicator of what I can or I can't do. My goals is my drive. So you gotta see your goals as a gearbox for your life. It is pushing you where you want to go. And sometimes you're gonna have to gear down to one gear, but you gotta get back to the speed that will take you to the destination you need to go. So how I say categorize yourself is to create goals, and that are, there's this common thing that we use, it's kind of a jargon called SMART goals, in which you're making your goals specific. You're making your goals measurable, meaning that it's something that you can actually work with, and something that is achievable. Sometimes we create this big plan of what we want for life, but what's your today goal? What's your goal today? My goal today might just to wake up and to go for a walk and to make dinner. You can have daily goal, but then you start to have monthly goal or weekly goal, and yearly goals. But you want to start somewhere. Sometimes we're trying to have, every new year we make this resolution, we have these big goals, but it's too much. You need to break them down, make them small, make them realistic for you to achieve, and ensure that they're relevant for where you are in your life. Don't make a goal that is not going to be something that you can achieve within that set time. So one of the things that I do, I create 3 categories of goal. I have my short-term goal, mid-term goal, and long-term goal. My short-term goal might be, I want to do a certain amount of reps in the gym this week, or I want to be eating this diet this week. So I might try my best to do it that way. So you have to make goals that are going to be things you can achieve daily, and things that you want to be doing over time. See your goals like building muscles. You don't just go into the gym and you lift up the heaviest weight. You start out small and then you gradually build up. That's the same thing with your mental. Don't think that you're just gonna go to a therapist at the first stage. It could be just talking to your wife, or talking to your friend, or talking to someone about how you're feeling, or even telling yourself, how am I feeling today, like Nate said. Really just connecting with you and be vulnerable with where you are. Consider when you will achieve it. Consider why the goal is important for you and what value underpin it. So that's one of the things I like what Nathan said earlier about having a value. Making something your value is one of the most important thing to be committed to a goal. If it is my value, I pride it. I esteem it. It's something that it's a core part of my identity. Now you have to get to create things that are going to be value in your life. Make your mental health something you value. Make your fitness something you value. Make relationships something you value. Make communication something you value, and create goals around your values. Now consider what your second medium term minimum goals are. We touched on that already. Now consider what are the 3 short term minimum goals that goals are. So it's really just making goals that will serve you, not just goals that are going to be something that you just have on a paper for a New Year resolution but never go back to look at them. You have to check in on your goals weekly, sometimes daily. Check in on them as often as you can, mean that you are keeping them in the forefront of your mind. Your goals have to move from imagination to plan, then action. All right. I think we've covered enough there. We can move on.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. And I apologize, there's a little typo up there. But yeah, it really is, you know, if you share what your goals are once you've written them down. I used to do that with members of my family at the end of the year. And we used to write down goals and put them in an envelope, and we would seal them. And one member of the family would look after the envelope. And the following year, we would open the envelopes, we'd get back together, and we would review how and where we were in terms of the goals that we had set ourselves. Because quite often when you write it, you put it out to the universe, somewhere in your mind, you have sown the seed. And so as you go through the year, you'll think to yourself, did I do that? Didn't I do that? Let me have a look at my goals. Let me see if I'm in alignment with them. But by doing it with someone, a member of the family or a friend, you become accountable, not just to yourself, because we can talk ourselves and say whatever we want. We are very good at appeasing ourselves. But if we do it with somebody, we become accountable. And by being accountable, we're saying we are committed to adopting a better way of life and a better way of being. Okay, now I can smell burning. I'm hoping it's someone else burning something outside. So thanks, guys. So I'm just going to really very quickly talk about the impact on relationships. Now, I think we need to understand that whilst you're going through this agony, internal turmoil, if you are in a relationship, whether or not it's a one-to-one or whether or not it's between your family or your friends, you have to be mindful that, you know, this is also having an impact much wider than with you and yourself. And quite often we tend to respond in a heightened manner in terms of the way that we communicate, usually body language and through speech. So we might bark at our partner when they say something which ordinarily, if you weren't feeling stressed, wouldn't sort of be so powerful. But I think it's about you keeping score about your transgressions. I'll get my teeth in, I apologize. And you need to try and identify what it is that is triggering this behavior. Because if you continue to do what you're doing, it's very, very likely that you not only will be exacerbating your own mental health, but you will be developing such a gulf between yourself and those around you that who might not quite understand what is going on. So it's really about communicating, look, you know, I'm going through a difficult time, I'm not feeling so well, you know, going through some of the things that we've talked about already, and tuning into those feelings so that you give whoever it is around you some insight. And it's not a sign of weakness, so don't think it's a sign of weakness. Don't think that you don't want anybody to know about your business. But you know what you don't want to do is to alienate people around you whilst you're going through this critical stage. So, as I've already said, it's important to be aware of what your emotional triggers are. Now, my organisation, which is called Soul to Soul Connections, we believe that we can help you. It is the UK's only one and only bespoke introduction service for melanin men and women who are looking for companionships or relationships or long-term committed relationships. And it's in its infancy. We haven't quite reached the year. In July of this year, we will be operating we will be celebrating our first birthday. And the reason why I sort of set it up, because to cut a very long story short, I was quite keen to be in a relationship, and still am, with a man of my similar cultural heritage. And I tried a number of ways of making that a reality. I eventually came across an introduction service that was sort of set up for Europeans, and found myself going and being interviewed. And at the end of the interview, the interviewer said, you know, it's very unlikely that we'll be able to match you with any men on our books. And with that sense of outrage, I was just curious. I thought, you know, A, why is it that they've got no gentlemen on their books that I would be suitable for? And B, as a community, why is it that we are always looking outside rather than within? You know, why don't we have the structures within our community to make something so that is actually fundamental to our community? Why is there nothing like this? And so I ended up developing Soul to Soul Connections. And I have to say the successes that we've had have been hugely successful, and that's because of the way that we use various tools in order to connect not like-minded individuals who've gone on to take their relationships from strength to strength. And I can reassure you that using our way of connecting will be guaranteed to your success. Now, I did want to sort of, again, before we round up, talk about the emergency toolkit. And it is an online, an e-facility, let's say, or an e-book. But just so that you're aware, it's important that, you know, if you are feeling these symptoms, that you develop your own personalized support network around you, again, with people that you trust. It's important that you do things, as Antonio's talked about, his sacred hour for the day, and he's doing something that gives him pleasure, because if he's not doing what gives him pleasure, he's of no use to his wife and his children. You know, again, look at your diet. It's important that you rest and develop good sleeping patterns. If you're someone who's used to watching films to the middle of the night, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and then you're finding that the alarm goes off at 7 o'clock because you've got to get up for work, I certainly would be rethinking that. And I know many people who do things like that, and it's not even the weekend. Midweek, they're watching Netflix until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Whoever's got their annotation button on, if you could just take that off or undo your annotations, that would be great, and we'll have less scribbles across the screen. I would definitely say, no matter how small you believe your goals, take action. All right, it's really, really important, so you can see at the end of your journey or on your path to wellness how you have progressed. Because if you haven't got a starting point, as you get better in your mental health awareness, you won't know what the beginning looked like, because all you'll remember is the present. So take action, no matter how small it is. Breathing, meditating, being aware of how you breathe. You know, your lungs have got 3 lobes, and invariably what we do is we only use the top parts of our lungs. I would definitely say first thing in the morning, sit upright in bed and take deep breaths to the base of your lungs, where you are literally pushing your lungs against the tip of your diaphragm. Take deep breaths and do it rhythmically for about 5-10 minutes every morning. Go back to your affirmations where you were looking at, giving back gratitude, connecting with your inner spirit and your ancestral guides. These are very, very simple things. I embrace all of this. This is what my morning looks like. That's what a typical day for me now looks like, because, there was a time where I was taking on so much. I felt that my mental health was spiraling out of control. So joining a Black men's walking group, or a walking group of any kind, again, is very, very beneficial. Do it with a group, inspire each other, and continue on your growth. Now, there are a number of helpful contacts. We've got, if you take a note, if you've still got your pen and paper to hand, or take a screenshot, if you want to get in touch with me to talk about my service in a bit more detail, there are my details there. We've got Antonio's details here. He's got quite a number of, are these hashtags, Antonio? Are you still there?
Those are all Instagram platform that support Black men, either through psychoeducation or different platforms.
Right, so they can Google this. Can they go on to
Instagram
and find these? Yeah, okay, so please take screenshots of these. Then there is a Samaritans, the helpline, for those of you that are absolutely desperate. They're not all bad, I do reassure you. There may well be Samaritans out there who are much more diverse than the local Samaritans help station that I am based at. There are other organisations such as MBK International. I think that's based in South London, isn't it? Can anyone help me out there? You've got the
yeah.
Sorry, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, it was a brother who I've got acquainted with. I interviewed on the Global African Community radio that I'm a part of, Galaxy Afui, by the name of Brother Ola. Unfortunately, was unable to join, but it's called My Brother's Keeper International. And they focus on, well, it's in the name. So they focus on supporting one another as brothers. But yeah, definitely check out. I mean, there's amazing combination of links there from all of us. And I'm sure those that are in the chat, our guests, if they're not themselves, they probably would know as well, but or do seek out what we've got here, isn't it? So yeah.
Right.
And the Black Belt support group is BFSG.
Right, lovely. And there's also the Fathers Forum that you've passed details. There's a couple of others, they're based in America. You might be able to follow what they're up to online. There's a therapyforblackmen.org. There's the blackmenheal.org. And again, these are based in America, but they've got a very good interactive website. And also my service. If you try to access it, it's actually been transferred from the current server onto another one, so you might not be able to get through until Monday, but do take screenshots. Okay, so we've come to the end, and I'd like to thank for those of you that have stayed with us throughout the last 2.5 hours. Thank you so much. It's been lovely having you here with us. We're now going to open the floor for 5 minutes for any questions, and then we're going to just have a minute's silence, if that's okay, in honor of our ancestors who've managed to get us this far, because we've had to stand on their shoulders in order to get here to share this evening with each other. And I think it's really important and respectful that we honor what they've done and the roads that they've traveled. So I think I saw, is it someone's hand go up? Can anyone see that? I can't see it from my screen. Can you see it?
Yeah, Brother JB or Brother Ray.
Good evening. How are we doing? We well?
We are well, thank you.
Lovely. First of all, I just want to say, Brother Nat, thank you for the invite to this tonight. It was amazing, and you know our schedules, but I had to make time to be in this one, and I'm truly grateful for it, mate. Thank you very much. Sister Zora and Antonio, again, thank you guys. Absolutely fabulous presentation. A lot of good content in there. I wanted to speak for quite a while, but I just never want to interrupt you guys. You know what I mean? Yeah, I was just soaking it in and taking it in. But I'm gonna not try to take up too much time because I know we've gone over. I just want to make a few points on little points that we heard as we went through the presentation. And I think they've been dealt with in this presentation, and we need to take away some of that knowledge with us. Particularly in being, we identified that Black men in particular might not identify with a mental illness because, as Antoria said, man, bigger than that, you know what I mean? Or, you know, you shake it off because it's just in our culture. But, and I think one of the key things that we need to do is, as much as we teach the individual how to recognize it within themselves, is about us as a community recognizing it within each other and having the resources to help one another. The NHS is a great resource. I agree with you, if you can get in. But what I tend to find, I work in the mental health system, what I tend to find is those that are in there are possibly the ones that have gone past the extent of their help that could have stopped them from getting there in the first place. So we need to have a system or a mechanism where we can pick it up within our community. I don't know, you guys, there's enough of us on this forum where we could form something where we teach counselors to give 6 weeks counseling to one another in a community organization. You know, you might not get the therapy, but it could be intermediate on your way to therapy. So you get a little speech with somebody who's been trained to just allow you to talk, open up, you know. So I love the fact that there was a lot of persons in this meeting who actually have those services and have put those that announcements out into the group. I will be taking those away. I'm also on a internet radio station, and I will be sending this information out to the network as well. Very, very valuable. Antonio, I know you picked up on my hashtag blessed, hashtag grateful. I just wanted to explain that to you, my friend, because as the presentation went on, everybody gave a lot of tools in how you handle stress. Now, the reality is to face that stress is constant. Stress doesn't disappear. So the fact that I've dealt with my stress today doesn't mean that I won't have stress tomorrow. I know this. But if I start from a basis of accepting that I am blessed, when that stress comes to me, it's about saying, okay, stress is here. How do I deal with it? And then finding the right tool, the right mechanism to break it down. And I remain blessed. Now, yeah. I'm not saying I'm not going through that stress. This is not church-based. This is faith-based, yes, but not on a church, on my Father. For others, that faith could be within themselves, their strength of knowing that they've done it before. So I will do it again. Now, I don't know where your strength comes from, but mine is faith-based. And my faith allows me to know that, you know what, as a problem arises, a problem will be faced, because the stress comes when we try to run. Yeah, when we try to deny the problem, when we try to deny a situation. So understanding all of that allows me to know that I am going to remain forever blessed and forever grateful while I go through my storm. Do you see where I'm coming from? So it wasn't really trying to say that I don't acknowledge I feel anxiety sometimes, or I might have a moment of breakdown where I'm like, oh, too much. But there has to be a moment where I say, oh, yeah, too much. But guess what? I can do this. Yeah, and that's what I basically meant in that. So yeah, I fully agree with what you said afterwards, because for some people, yeah, you're right. They say, oh, I'll go and see my pastor on Sunday and it's all good. No, it came back to what Brother Nat said. Faith without action is nothing. Yeah. Now, if you don't take the action to correct the course of your life, the only thing that's going to happen is the same thing that happened before. Nothing happens. Nothing changes if nothing changes. You understand? Nothing changes if nothing changes. I love the goal. I love the affirmations. I love the vision boards. That's me. I wake up every morning to a vision board. So you know what? I don't care what they're going to throw at me today, because I know one day, you see what's up on that wall is going to be mine. So bring it on. Do you see where I'm coming from? And it's just that element of who I am. So I'm going to share my radio show with you guys in the chat room as well. Please log in, and I will probably invite you guys to come and speak on my show as well, if you don't mind. It was absolutely wonderful, guys. That was on my Saturday night, not missed. Lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. Right, so, oh goodness, so I do apologise for what's happened to the presentation. Right, sorry about that. Oh, it's gone to the, oh wow, why has it done that? We're just at the end. Oh dear.
To do it again. Just do it again.
Right, okay, so for those of you that are wanting requesting a copy of the presentation, I'd be more than happy to send it if you leave your contact details either in the chat, or you can send it to info@Soul to Soul Connections. Sorry, let's just move things forward. Sorry about this, folks. You're getting the presentation again. I'll be more than happy to send it out. Finally, before we go, I would like to consider developing some face-to-face workshops. Again, I think some of what we're doing would be of huge benefit on a sort of a workshop basis. Now that COVID has passed, I think we can safely get together in a small sort of arena. And again, if it's something that would interest you, please make it known. The other thing that I'm hoping to be able to organise is very much an open debate session, a bit like question time, where we've got an open forum and a film crew where we can sit and talk about these really, really serious issues that are facing our community. And all things being well, I'll let you know about it, where it's taking place in June. So if you're willing to have a film crew present, and again, another panel, including Antonio and our dear brother Nathaniel, please make it known, put your details, make yourself, your interest known at info@Soul to Soul Connections. Now, I want to now sign out and thank you very much once again. All things being well, if I can get this, sorry, you can tell how rubbish I am. Just bear with me a second. I'm just going to try and get this to play. I don't quite know how we managed to have so many scribbles on the screen. I'm just going to stop and see if I can share this screen. Right, can you see the screen? Can you see the screen?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. We're just going to play this as in honor of our ancestors instead of the 1 minute silence, but it's a prayer, a musical prayer. And thank you everyone who's online tonight, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
We are in the days of your power, Lord, yeah. The revival has begun. We are in the days of your power, Lord, yeah. Restoration begins. We are in the days of your power, Lord, yeah. The revival has begun. We are in the days of your power, Lord, yeah. Restoration begins. It begins in our heart, Lord, and it flows like a river, Lord, and it burns like a fire, yeah, yeah. Fire of the Lord. It begins in our hearts, Lord, and it flows like a river, and it burns like a fire. Fire of the Lord. Fire, fire, fire. Fire, fire, fire. Fire, fire, fire. Fire of the Lord. Fire, fire, fire. Fire, fire, fire. Fire, fire, fire. with your hand you will handle the mighty things that the Lord has done. Oh, 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 with your heart you can see, but in your life you will manifest. Oh, this is your manifestation. Oh, it begins in our heart, Lord, and it flows like a river, and it burns like a fire, yeah, yeah. Fire of the Lord. It begins in our hearts, Lord, and it flows like a river, and it burns like a fire, fire of the Lord. Fire, 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 his fire has come. Oh, fire, fire, fire of the Lord. Oh, fire, fire, fire of the Lord. Oh, fire, fire, fire of the Lord. Yeah. Oh. It's in the book of Hosea chapter 6. He says on the second day he will revive us, and on the third day he will restore us. Sonamai alomigai, simenai enorai mulada sana, alanedi adana masae, yanamale kilena neo. Madana komine sanana, shanana gaile marakale, urana soledie, soname kanayo bayalaba, ilarana kane alarama, ilaraka nale arada, will ye not revive us, will ye not revive us, on the second day. On the third day, will ye not restore us? On the third day, will ye not restore us? He will revive us. He will revive us. There's a revival. There's a revival. He will revive us. He will revive us. He will revive us. He will revive us. On the second day, he will revive us. And on the third day, and on the third day he will restore us. He is restoring us, restoring us. He is restoring us, restoring us. He is reviving us, reviving us. He is restoring us, restoring us. Yeah, yeah. He will revive us, he will revive us. There's a revival, there's a revival. He will revive us.
Right, thank you so much. I think we're going to call it a day. We've run over by 45 minutes, but before I leave, just to sort of humbly thank Brother Nathaniel and Antonio with all my heart. It's just been an absolute joy working with you both. And I am sure we'll be working aplenty in the forthcoming months. And I thank all those of you that have stayed and enjoyed the evening with us. And, you know, together as a community, I think we have got all the tools and the building blocks to support each other and our communities and those that we love, especially those that are going through a critical time at the moment. You know, we can, you know, this is, for me, I think the last couple of years have been a real pivotal point in the shift in our community, in the shift in the consciousness of the Black communities, because we can. We've got all the tools, we just have to reach out, use the knowledge, connect with each other, and just make sure we support each other, including our men, most specifically in these difficult and challenging times. So I'm going to sign off now and thank you all once again. Antonio and Brother Nathaniel, I will be in touch directly. Okay, thank you folks. Thanks for joining us and take very good care.
Bye everyone.
Take care.
I'm going
Take
to
care
end
all.
it.